that's breaking it down, you're going to have problems sleeping. So where's one of the places you should be looking if you have sleep issues? Intestinal tract. The blood-brain barrier is compromised by these bacteria that we're talking about, these LPSs. And they will facilitate the passage of malignant amyloid beta-derived neurotoxins. What does that mean? People that are in the know when you've got plaquing on the brain. When Alzheimer's, you see this plaquing, you see it in MS, you see it in a lot of these neurological types of conditions. Well, there's actually been some demonstration when you get in there and really focus on clearing up that intestinal tract. What's very interesting is that plaquing starts to leave. It's difficult to do. I'm going to tell you just a quick story because there's a gentleman out there, and I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he's an authority when it comes to grains and gluten and those types of things. And I was listening to a webinar that he did. There were a bunch of professionals on the webinar, and he was talking about a guy that was 45, and just out of the blue, he started dragging his feet. He had this ataxic type gait. They didn't know if it was MS, they didn't know if it was ALS, they couldn't figure out what was going on with this guy. Took some pictures, you could see the plaquing starting on the brain. What they did is they took this guy off all grains, all gluten, not just gluten, but all grains. It was about 8 months, and his gait came back 100%. Now, am I saying that that's going to be the case for everybody out there? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, we need to be taking a look at some of these types of things. The growth of bifidobacterium minimizes the bad effect of these bacteria. So, there again, supplementation with some of these probiotics is a good idea when you've got a lot of this bacterial type stuff that's floating around in your bloodstream because it's being absorbed in this leaky gut situation. Here's a study that was done. Patients taken 8 billion colony-forming units with CFUs of lactobacillus 3 times a day noticed a significant improvement in anxiety compared to a placebo. Now, I'm not saying go out and take probiotics 3 times a day. The point is it's having a positive effect on all these psychological type issues that are out there. And here's another, bifidobacteria. Remember you saw the lactobacillus, like I said, depending on who the authority is, there's somewhere between 400 and 600 different strains out there. So bifidobacteria supplementation has been shown to improve serum levels of total cholesterol, fasting glucose, and insulin. So is probiotics, taking that as a supplement or at least creating an environment, is that going to have an effect, a positive effect on blood sugar issues? Absolutely. Okay? Don't get me started on this whole cholesterol thing too. In fact, that would be a good discussion to talk about. Because if you've been paying attention to what's happening in the news, this whole cholesterol thing they're throwing out the window now with eating fats and those types of things. Sure, you don't want high cholesterol, but you have to pay attention again to what nature does. When I ask people, where does cholesterol come from? Your liver makes 85% of it that's in your body. The question should be, why is my liver making that? And the answer is, it's combating a lot of the inflammation that is in the system as a result of some of the stuff that we're talking about. When you have the inflammation, you have cellular destruction. The liver is making new cells to try to fix the problem. Oral injection of the bifidobacterium resulted in evidence of change of the serotonin metabolism in the bloodstream. Okay, here's again, what we're talking about. You create the right type of environment in the intestinal tract, you're going to have an effect on your thinking and your mood. Fish oils. We could do a whole seminar on fish oils. Fish oils blunt these bacteria from getting into the bloodstream to decrease the inflammatory response. Now, I'm just going to touch on this very briefly because here's what people do. They go and they buy junk. Very important when you buy fish oils to make sure that you know it has been filtered. I saw the World Authority about 8 years ago. His name is Jorn Dernberg, and if you look him up on the internet, everybody follows his research. And I saw him do a lecture down in Minneapolis. Here's the first thing he said. He said, when you buy fish oils, what are you paying for? The assumption is, well, I'm paying for the milligram dosage and the concentration. It's not true. What you are paying for when you're purchasing fish oils is you are paying for the purity of the product. You need to know how many times it's been filtered. Is it going to tell you on the bottle? No. Now you got to do a little digging or you've got to know. I looked it up on the internet, Gary, and it said filtered. What are they telling you? One time. According to the authority, it needs to be filtered at least twice. So you look for double filtered, triple filtered. Now, geez, there's a brand out there, Gary. You know, I used to be able to get it with my prescription, but I can't anymore. It's called Lavazza. It's $175 a bottle. Why is that stuff so expensive? It's been filtered 5 times. Do you need it filtered 5 times? Not necessarily. 2 or 3. The authority says 2. So sometimes you have to do a little digging, or when you know, because what do people do? They go buy the cheap stuff. Because fish oils are not that expensive. What is expensive is the filtering. I'm going to tell you just a quick story because I had a psychologist come in to see me for some other issues, and I was telling her about this, and she said to me, she says, well, you know, how about this stuff that I'm getting from such and such? I said, throw it in the garbage, it's junk. She said, well, why don't I just give it to my dog? I said, do you like your dog? Yeah. Throw it in the garbage. Well, why don't I just dump it in my plant? I said, do you like your plant? I mean, she wasn't quite getting it, right? So, I can't afford all that stuff, Gary. Hey, extra virgin olive oil will repress inflammation. Very good. Do a couple tablespoons of that. Simple to do, doesn't taste that red hot, be creative, mix it in a smoothie or something like that. Coconut oil, very anti-inflammatory, very good for you. Feeds the brain, great stuff. Now, are there going to be people out there that are going to have reactions to this stuff? Of course, if that's the case, you stay away from it. There isn't a quality food on earth that somebody's not going to react to, that's just the way it is. Very unlikely. Quality oils are critical. And quality fats are critical. But what's quality? Well, I already alluded to vegetable oils and those types of things. You go out to eat a lot, what are you getting? It's not that red hot. So, yeah.
When you said fermented, did you say fermented?
I said fermented vegetables, yeah.
So like sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut, cabbage, or, you know, even if you eat, I always use the 2 B's and 2 C's, there's lots of them. But Brussels, broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage. Now, I know what somebody's thinking in the room. Wait a second, Gary, that stuff's no good for thyroid issues. Guess what? If you get an organic, what I just talked about, some of these, generally they're not a problem. There's a little bit of a difference the way it's metabolized if it's not 100% as natural as possible. When you have Asians that come from Asia, they don't have thyroid issues. When they come here, they run into thyroid issues.
But they're not fermented.
Well, no, I just threw that in there.
Okay.
You can ferment those things, yeah, Teddy?
Yeah, on some of the health websites that I read on, they're saying that a lot of companies are putting vegetable oil mixed with the olive oil.
Yeah.
How can you tell which is good and which is bad?
Well, vegetable oil is no good.
Well, I know that, but I mean, how can you tell whether it's a good olive oil?
Well, it should tell you if there's vegetable oil mixed in there. It'll tell you on the label.
From the ones that I heard, they're not telling you, they're not putting it on the label. It's
I've never heard that
just-
before.
I have.
Yeah, Gene?
There's a huge racket with olive oil and extra virgin olive oil. You gotta be really careful about what you buy. They're marketing it as extra virgin when it's not. So you gotta be careful what you buy.
Yeah. Same thing with canola. Canola oil is actually anti-inflammatory, but the problem with a high percentage of canola, if it's not organic, they use a petroleum-based product to extract the oil, and they're going to tell you they burn it off and you're not getting that? Right. So, yeah, you got to be careful. So you got to do a little research or ask around, you know, and I'm not real familiar with, you know, which ones, but that needs to be investigated. Okay, magnesium. We're almost done here. Magnesium promotes an environment that the bad bacteria do not thrive in. You're going to see more and more stuff out there. You know the old thing for osteoporosis and that type of thing? Women need to be taking calcium, blah, blah, blah. That's not true anymore. It's actually, magnesium's the big deal. Magnesium's the calmer. Magnesium's great for blood pressure, for sleep, all of that stuff. but very good for assisting in the healing in the intestinal tract. Okay, the problem with magnesium, not that it's a problem, but if you take too much of it, it can make you loose, too loose. So if you're taking a lot of it, that's probably what is doing it. There is a chelated magnesium called glycinate, magnesium glycinate, Glycinate, that you can get. You won't run into that problem. So that's the only thing, it just might make you too loose. But people that have trouble with constipation, it's a good choice. Okay? Important note here, the immune system may be any, the immune response can be any tissue in the body. If you haven't caught on what we're talking about here, any place in the body can be targeted. Gastrointestinal tract, the brain, the pancreas, the bone. Remember I said bone, osteoporosis is actually being put in the autoimmune category now. Thyroid, etc. Okay, now, you don't have to remember what this first sentence says, but it says, gluten is a protein composed of prolamine. Prolamines are resistant to proteolytic enzymes, which may make a person susceptible to celiac disease. The point I'm trying to make here, here's what people do. Well, I'm going to eat that junk anyway because I like the taste of it, but I'm going to take digestive enzymes. Doesn't work. You're still running into a problem. Go ahead.
I have a friend also who has to be gluten-free, but now she's come up with the gluten blockers. And so she takes them and then eats the gluten, and
Doesn't work.
I didn't think so.
No. That's marketing. Somebody have a question back here? Anyway. 30% of Caucasians carry the HLA-DQ2 gene, making them susceptible to celiac. Does it necessarily mean you're going to have a problem? No, because they're doing other good things. Because if you look on the bottom there, only 1 in 100 will develop the disease. Why are more developing the problem? Because you got more altered stuff out there like foods and those types of things. Now, here's another thing. I went to my doctor and I was checked for a gluten allergy, Gary. Everything's fine. Guess what? Here you go. You need total villi atrophy in order for gluten allergy to show up in a blood test. So when you look over here, you see the shag carpeting here. When it's flat, like the floor, that's when it's going to show up in a blood test. You might still have the gluten issue and it's not going to show up. So now you got a false negative. It's there. And it's going to come down the line. The remaining susceptibility is thought to be as a result of a combination of genetic and environmental factors. All of this stuff that's out there that's negative that we've talked about, not getting enough sunlight, not getting enough sleep, not eating the right types of things, and on and on and on. And the earlier you're exposed to that stuff, for example, in the first 3 months or up to the 4 to 6 months, so kids that are exposed to a lot of this stuff, they're going to develop celiac disease on antibodies much earlier, and they're going to run into a lot of these other types of autoimmune conditions. And you see a lot more of that now, these younger kids running into a lot of these types of conditions. Yeah, Daryl?
Can you take a good vitamin D supplement if you're not going to get enough sunlight during winter or anything like that?
Well, if you heard his question. Now, here's the answer to that. There is no substitute for the sun, right? But a supplement is a supplement. It's not as good as the sun, but yes, you should be doing that, but it doesn't do exactly the same thing, okay? When you're exposed to sunlight, and of course common sense, don't go out and get burned. Again, if you're eating junk, stay out of the sun. You're going to run into a problem. But if you're eating the right types of things, it's not the sun, it's the types of oils that you're eating. Again, you got to use what nature does. Certain things, you got to use a little common sense. Because I get that phone call. My doctor said that, Gary, you're recommending in the wintertime 5,000 units of vitamin D. I said, yeah, if you got an autoimmune, I'm recommending 10. Wow, that's way too much. Guess what? If you are exposed to the sun and you've worked into it in mid-June, and you're out in the sun for half an hour, your skin makes 20,000 units. Why would it do that? Because it's important. But there's a feedback mechanism when you get it from the sun and it shuts off. You don't get a feedback mechanism when you're taking it orally. Now, has anybody ever died of an overdose of vitamin D? Never. People have run into some problems. I'm aware of people that take 50,000 units. They've done it for every day for 2 years before they ran into a problem. It's difficult. Pretty tough to do. So the people that I work with, I tell them 5,000. If they've got like an autoimmune type of thing, I tell them 10 during those months. But to answer your question, there's no substitute for the sun.
Is a metastasized vitamin D better than like just a pill?
Metastasize.
I get a metastasized vitamin D from North Circle, so I was just
I don't even
wondering.
know
It's a
what that
liquid.
is. And incidentally, we're talking about vitamin D. If you're taking vitamin D in a pill form, it needs to be D3, number one. First of all, and if you don't have K2 with the vitamin D, it's not going to work. You need vitamin K2 with vitamin D. Well, it's not in the pill. Vitamin D is not that expensive. K2 is. K2 is the traffic cop that tells vitamin D where to go. So what you're seeing more so now with osteoporosis and these types of degenerative types of conditions, vitamin D is very important, so is magnesium. Way more important than magnesium. Way more important than calcium.
With number 5, glutamine, I had a calcium glutamine product. Is that what you're talking about here with number 5?
No, we're getting to that.
Okay.
It's just what it was chelated with. I know what you're talking about there. Okay. Do you have a question?
Can you just repeat you need the K2,
You need vitamin K2 with the vitamin D3.
and that's a type of vitamin K as in the...
There's
the
K1,
body.
there's K1, K2, K3, K4. There's actually 4 of them. You're going to hear about K1 and K2. K1 is the biggie that you hear about. It's the blood thinner. You know, you got to watch that. K2 doesn't do that. Okay. More severe neurological and psychiatric conditions associated with non-celiac gluten sensitivity include schizophrenia and cerebellar ataxia. I was just talking about the guy that did the seminar that I was, and he did a case study. He was talking about the guy dragging his feet. That's what he was talking about, is the cerebellar ataxia. There's a guy in town here, used to be a very famous sports guy. I'm not going to tell you who he is. And I just got a phone call. He's got this, so I know what's going on with this guy. Nobody's figuring it out. Schizophrenia, tied in with intestinal issues? Absolutely. So is the intestinal issue the whole cause? No, it's a big piece of the puzzle. The gastrointestinal tract is by far the greatest user of glutamine in the body. Now, glutamine is an amino acid, one of the best healers for the intestinal tract. It's not that expensive. You can't take too much. Well, let me back up a step. Of course, you could take too much. It's difficult to do. But the enterocytes, or the cells in the intestinal lining, use glutamine as the principal metabolic fuel. So it's very effective in protecting those tight gut cell junctions. Remember that leaky gut where those cells split apart? What's going to help hold that together? Glutamine's a biggie, and it helps heal those intestinal cells. The other thing is vitamin D, getting back to that again, is the rubber band that pulls those gap junctions in the intestinal tract back together. And then there's the list of the stuff that you've got.
Is it possible for you to tell us which products that we have that have glutamine in them?
It'll tell you right on the label.
Okay.
And one is the fiber. Question?
Where do we get vitamin D, mostly through our body, any part of the skin or anywhere the skin?
Yes, any part of your skin. But again, okay, May 15th rolls around, June 15th, are you going to go out there for half an hour, 45 minutes? No. You don't want to burn yourself. You got to work into it. 2 or 3 minutes. Increase it by 2 or 3 minutes. But again, what are you eating? That has a lot to do. You know, this whole skin cancer thing, it's not the sun that's the problem. It's the junk that you're eating. And I'm done. We're going to open this up to questions. So it's been an hour. You had a question, Darryl?
So how much of the, I heard you say this once before, how much of the body should be exposed to optimally get your vitamin D? It's not just, your hands.
Well, there isn't an optimal exposure. I know what you're talking about. Okay, here's what I tell people. If you're getting this exposure, you're getting enough vitamin D where you wouldn't have to take a supplement, okay? The rule of threes, 30% of your body exposed, 30 minutes, working into it, of course, 3 days a week. 3 days a week, 30% of your body exposed, 30 minutes. But you're not going to start with 30 minutes, of course. You're going to work into that. But so if you're getting that 3 days a week. Questions?
I'm a surgery nurse. Can you tell me a good place that I can get reputable information like this so I can bring it back to my surgeons and show them? Because they don't believe me when I talk about this stuff.
It's all over, there's thousands of studies
Oh,
out
I
there.
know, but then the one time I talked to my one surgeon about this, he threw it back in my face and he says, you show me the study that's double-blind, blah, 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 like they do.
Everything that I had up there today, I've got, there's studies behind everything. You notice what I said, study?
Yeah.
And I didn't write it on the bottom. But that's, I'm going to tell you just a quick story along that avenue. About 8 or 9 or 10 years ago, I was invited down to the University of Arizona to do a lecture in front of MDs and PhDs. Of course, you know, this dumb chiropractor's up in front, what are they thinking? The gal that set it up, I met with her the day before, and she said there's going to be about 60 of them. They're going to come after you, so you better have this. And every slide I had the study on the bottom, and it was all this stuff. So to answer your question, I've got all that stuff. But anyway, and she said, here's going to be the deal. She said they have to be this in service, so they have to have X number of hours, you know, just like everybody else. So she said what they're going to do is they're going to come in 15 minutes late, they're going to stick around for 45 minutes, and they're all going to leave. I said, okay. And she had something sitting on the desk. I said, what's this? She said, this is the nurse that gave the lecture today. I said, it looks like a vitamin D. She said, yeah, and they went after her. And she didn't have the answers. And I was looking, I said, I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow. I said, this is ridiculous. I was looking, I said, where did she get this stuff? She must have Googled something, whatever. So anyway, next day comes, of course, they come in 15 minutes late. And I said, okay, we're going to get started. We're going to talk about 2 things today. The first hour, we're going to talk about vitamin D. And the gal in the back, a nurse, raised her hand, and she said, we had that yesterday. I said, I saw your lecture. It was junk. You're going to learn something today. And I said, secondly, we are going to talk about today, in the second hour, the number 3 killer in the United States. And I will bet nobody in this room knows what it is. Diabetes, stroke, no. Now I've got their attention. You know what it is? It's autoimmune. Cancer is number 1. It passed up heart disease in 2005. Heart disease is number 2. Autoimmune is number 3. So 2 hours went by, nobody got up. And I had all the studies. They were all examining that stuff. So to answer your question, you can find it if you know where to look. You know, I could help you out a little bit. I mean, I got volumes of that stuff. And all the, you know, there's thousands of studies out there. Yeah, Susan.
Jerry, I have to go back to the curry and the curcumin and the Alzheimer's because you know that's a biggie.
Yeah.
And so what kind of things would you encourage a person to incorporate into the diet?
Well, first of all, you've got to go after this intestinal tract. Now you'll notice that some of the things that I gave you here are kind of low grade. When I get a bad leaky gut, I don't use this because it's not going to be strong enough. But I didn't want to get into some of the, see, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you the real strong stuff that's out there. You know why that is? Because what's going to happen? People start taking all that stuff, they get sick, they can't figure out what's going on, and then they don't know what to do because there's no supervision. But, so where are you going to start with Alzheimer's and those types of things? Where you're going to start is in the intestinal tract. But, you know, a quality curcumin is going to be a start in the right direction. But the reason I brought this up is because you're going to be hearing more about this. And then you can do a little investigating. You can go right online, Google Alzheimer's and curcumin. You'll find stuff on there. It'll pop up. Is there a question?
Oh, just with the vitamin D discussion, do you think there's merit in drawing people's vitamin D levels to know where they're starting at?
Absolutely. Her question was, do you think you should be drawing blood just to see where your vitamin D level's at? So let's talk about that just for a second. So if you go to a medical doctor, they're gonna tell you, just remember this number. They're gonna tell you want that number between 30 and 100. The authorities out there, the authorities are saying that's way too low. You want that number between 50 and 100. The healthy range for vitamin D is between 60 and 95. That's the healthy range.
Most every patient I've got it on is low. This is Duluth, Minnesota.
I haven't seen too, well, yeah, but you know what? You go down to Phoenix, theirs is low. Why? So doggone hot, they're inside all the time. No, really, they have problems with that. But to answer your question, yeah, vitamin D is very important to try to keep that level in a zone where it should be.
The vitamin D and, you know, like I had mine tested, it was 18. You go to the doctor, they'll give you 50,000 IUs of vitamin D and they'll tell you take it however often. I have a friend that.
Once a week usually.
Once a week.
Yeah.
Went back multiple times, got retested, and it was at 19 after almost a year of taking 50,000 IUs every week.
Why? I already gave you the answer.
Doesn't have to pay.
Exactly.
Too.
So the prescription that they're giving you does not have the K2 in it, and so your body's not.
That's why I'm
absorbing.
telling you this. See, you can go, vitamin D is not that expensive, but you're not gonna see it with K2 in it because I'm not buying that stuff. It's more expensive than this over here. Well, what good is it if it doesn't work? That's why I'm telling you those things. Question?
Yes, I was told by some doctors years ago that Lake Superior, around the periphery of Lake Superior, there's a higher incidence of brain tumors than any other place in the world. Have you heard anything about that? And does that have to do with pollution? Or does it have to do with lack of sunlight or nutrition?
Well, first of all, I've never heard that.
I was told that back in the 1970s and 1980s.
Okay, that's news to me, and I don't know why that would be. I know there's a much higher incidence of different types of cancers up on the Iron Range. A lot of that has to do with the silicon dust and the iron ore and that type of thing. But I've never heard that around what I've heard around the Great Lakes area is there's a higher incidence of thyroid issues.
I've heard that too.
You know,
Thyroid milk, they call it. But my friend had a blastoma in the medulla, cerebellum, the spinal cord, and they said that was very rare, but they said, then that's when they told me about the brain tumors in general around Lake Superior.
Okay, I've never heard that. This is news to me. And it could be the case. And I'm surprised because I would have probably heard that. So I can't really, yeah, I don't know.
You don't have environmental or whether it's nutritional or.
Well, think about environmental. Why would that possibly be if it's around Lake Superior? What do you got sitting out on the west end, right on the doggone lake?
The barrels that they dumped?
No, well, that's part of it too. But what's being spewed up into the air?
Paper mill.
Paper mill. Thunder Bay has a major problem. So, again, talking about environmental pollutants, those types of things.
And vitamin D and K and E have to fight pollution?
Yeah, they'll help that, yes. But again, you know, so what do people do? Well, I'm just going to take all these magic pills. I'm not going to change my lifestyle. It's not going to work very well.
I remember back in, I don't know if it's true now, but back then, they were giving babies Similac and putting on Similac instead of breast milk or a regular milk for the first 6 months of life. And I was just wondering if that Similac is artificial.
Yep.
That it has to.
And here's a fact for you too. Children that have not been breastfed will never, ever, ever develop an immune system that functions 100% efficiently. So that breastfeeding is a big deal. And then you're going to give cow's milk and those types of things. Is that going to work? Well, they got the lactase. Wait a second. Well, the cow was on the farm, grass-fed, blah, 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 wasn't injected with antibiotics. Wait a second. Do cows have hormones? Do they? Of course they do. Is that going to get into the milk that the kids get? Absolutely. So, not a good choice. And then now you got the artificial junk, you know, bad news. She wants me to talk about the thyroid a little bit. You got a couple hours. I'm going to tell you something that's very interesting. And 9 out of 10 times, obviously, the thyroid issues that you see out there are females. Okay? I'm going to give you just a couple things, because I could talk for an hour on this subject. Okay, first of all, where are we running into a lot of the problems? Okay, when you look at a periodic chart in chemistry class when you're in high school, what you saw is all of the elements were those that kind of function similar, they had them in rows. Okay, you have one row called the halogens, right? So what is the big mineral that the thyroid needs? Iodine. But not iodine from iodized salt. It's synthetic. It's not, does not send the same message. That drives me crazy when I hear this. So, the other halogens then, that, remember we're talking about molecular mimicry here? Well, the same thing happens with those elements that look like iodine. What are the other halogens out there? Bromide, chlorine, fluoride. Where's that coming from? Water. Well, I don't drink that stuff. Do you shower in that stuff? Yeah? Okay. There's, yeah. I mean, they use a lot of that bromide and so on in swimming pools and those types of things. So that's part of the problem. Okay? What I am seeing is all of the, and I've just discovered this myself over the last couple of years. There's an intestinal connection, and I'm not quite sure what it is. So you're absorbing a lot of this stuff that is getting on the receptor sites in the thyroid, just like in the other, organs that were, it's almost like an autoimmune. They stick that term Hashimoto's on there, but most thyroid that aren't even autoimmune are autoimmune. So, to answer your question, it's a lot of, the water, you could be breathing it, don't drink that tap water, first of all. Well, it's tough, you take a shower. Well, get some type of filter. You can filter a lot of that stuff out of there. But focusing on the intestinal tract. Once you've got the thyroid issue, are you going to totally reverse that? No, you can make it a lot better. A lot of times when you follow a lot of these things that we're talking about here, are you going to get rid of the problem 100%? Probably not. You can make it anywhere from 25 to 85% better with a lot of the things that I'm talking about. But, good question. Okay, we got about 2 more minutes.
Is raw honey an okay substitute for sugar?
Raw honey is an okay substitute for sugar unless you have a kid under the age of 12. Don't give them honey. They don't process it. So it's okay, yeah. Yeah, Suzanne.
Okay, I got 3 quick things. Is a little bit of soy better, okay instead of milk?
Well, her question is a little bit of soy. Here's the problem with soy. I would say no. Why? 89% of the soy in the United States is genetically modified. Major problem.
If it says organic?
That's, you still don't know.
Okay.
I would stay away from it.
Coconut milk then?
Coconut oil, coconut milk is a great choice.
Okay, and then with the yogurt, does that change from acidity to alkaline then in your system? Well, you said something about acidity.
No, what I said was, if you're going to take yogurt, you think you're going to get the probiotic from yogurt, you're not going to get it from yogurt because as soon as it hits the stomach, it's destroyed. Therefore, you take it in a patented delivery system where it's actually released in the intestinal tract.
Okay,
That's
one more
what I
question. When I had surgery, then I got a bladder infection because of the catheter during the surgery. Is there any way to prevent that?
Prevent the infection?
Bladder infection?
Well, the way you prevent it is all the lifestyle things that you're doing previous to that.
Okay.
Now, let's say you get an infection. That's where antibiotics come into play. Am I a big fan of that? No. But you got to get rid of the problem.
You have to,
But
yeah.
now, you did the antibiotics, what do you got to do? You got to resubstitute yourself with a lot of the good stuff. You got to get it
I eat
hard.
yogurt all day long. That doesn't work, huh?
You what's that?
I eat yogurt all day long when I had antibiotics.
It's going to help,
Okay,
but it's not going to fix the problem because exactly why I just told you.
thank you.
I heard good quality cranberry juice will help to decrease the bacteria sticking on
Yeah.
the bladder.
Absolutely.
And my question is, number one there, can you explain what it means by a good intestinal detox program? Is that all of the below?
No,
or- okay.
no. Okay, if you caught what her question was, could I explain what a good intestinal detox program is? To answer your question, there's a lot of good ones out there. Okay, so, I'm not gonna get into, you know, this one's great, this one's the best and all that stuff. You can do a little research, but here's what I'm gonna tell you. Everybody should be doing some type of an intestinal detox program, in my opinion, every 4 months. Holy crap, Gary, I've never done one. You should be doing one. Why? Because you're helping create an environment for the right types of things to thrive, but you're creating an environment also where you're not running into, you know, these leaky gut and all this other stuff. There's a lot of good ones out there. Generally, the ones that you're going to see are usually a 5-day or a 7-day. There's one, you know, if I've got extreme cases, I use this one. If I have a general one, I use this one. Did you guys come? Were you invited by?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she'll tell you what I use, because she uses the same thing, okay, for the average person out there. But when I've got a major problem, okay, see, because here's the thing, you know, I talk to people too. I say, you're constipated. No, I'm not. I'm regular 1 to 3 times. No, you're constipated. You know, and then I get the look. You get rust on the inside of the pipe. You got to get the rust off the inside of the pipe. You know, think about this. The intestinal tract is a mucous membrane, right? Does it give off mucus? Okay. So therefore, it's just like a nose. What happens when you get done with a cold? Everything gets kind of sticky and, you know. Same thing happens in the intestinal tract. You've got to clean that stuff out of there periodically. Does nature do it by itself? Or could you potentially do that just with all the right types of quality foods? It's possible. But in this day and age, you are so bombarded with so much stuff out there, breathing, swallowing stuff, you can't get away from it. That's why it's just a good preventative thing. And, you know, a lot of the authorities out there, some will say twice a year, some say 4 times a year. I say 3 times a year, like a 5-day thing. But there's a lot of good ones out there. You can go to your local health food store and get one. That's why I don't want to recommend, well, that's the one Gary recommends, that's the best.
Does that include fasting along with them usually, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
You don't necessarily have to fast with those. Can you do that? Will it work better? You know why I don't do that with people? Because then they're not going to do it. It's not an all or none thing. If you